So recently, I went into Reddit and I saw this post in I think it was a video game soundtrack or video game composer subreddit. There was this guy who was developing a video game and was asking for some source or some, content or channel in which he can get some sort of guidance of how to start making music for his own game. What he mentioned was that he was seeing some YouTube channels, some YouTubers that were kind of reacting to soundtracks or were creating content from a place where there was an assumption that the viewer knows something about music, knows something about DAWs, how to work in them, and that sort of stuff. And in today's video, what I want to show is how easy it is to start making music for your video game or for your piece of content, specifically in the my software choice, Reason. This video is gonna be like a combination of a why Reason in from my point of view, my go-to instruments in Reason, and also a little bit of how you can start putting together or start composing, writing music for your game. Again, this comes from someone who is not a trained musician. I am literally a self-taught musician, self-taught guitar player, self-taught Reason user, self-taught everything. And the first thing I want to get into is basically how to start getting inspired to make music for your game. And here it's not necessarily about skill, it's not necessarily about the DAW that you use, the instruments or whatever. It's about finding that tone, that vibe you want your game to have. And that starts by identifying the genre of your game, right? What's the mood of your game? Is it horror? Is it sci-fi? Is it a fun platformer? Is it cartoony? Is it atmospheric? All those things. Is it in space? Is it medieval or fantasy? All those things. I mean, you gotta set what type of game you're making. And once you have that, let's say you have a horror game, then what you want to do is go out there and start researching, right? To find inspiration. What I do personally is go to YouTube. I start creating a playlist of things that I find interesting and start saving it there. Now, I don't go exclusively to video game soundtracks. I would do movies, I would do shows, I would do music in general, right? Like a good Black Sabbath song, it works for a horror anytime, right? And also I don't exclusively stay within the genre of the video game. Let's say horror. Okay, so but there are many other games that are not necessarily horror but are kind of mysterious. Analyze what makes the music that caught your attention, what makes it good for that, for whatever it wants to accomplish, right? It's not necessarily about imitating or copying the melodies and the sound, and try to dissect what makes that vampire track good for what it wants to accomplish in that video game. That's not skill, that's not anything, that's just you and setting your intention in your music. And if you want to learn a little bit more about how to find your voice, go to my channel. There's a video called The 10 Rules That I Set for Myself to Make My Music Sound Unique. There I explain a little bit more about all of this. So now the second part is Reason, right? Why I think Reason, it's a very good starting point for you to start making music quickly. The thing about Reason is that right off the box, you get lots of instruments that sound very good. Synths, samplers, and lots of things. Other than instruments, you also get a bunch of utilities, a bunch of effects, everything you need basically. And that's not to say that you won't find that in other DAWs, but I find that in Reason they're just better. Like for the longest time, I didn't even need to go out there and look for VSTs plugins and that sort of stuff, because I felt that what I had in Reason was enough for what I was doing, which was making music as a hobby, right? Not professionally. I was just playing with what I had, and I've always felt and still feel that right off the bat, when you install Reason bare bone with what it brings, stock instruments and effects, you have a lot to play with. The other thing why I think Reason is very good is because it's flexible in a sense that it's easy to use if you just want to stick to, the presets, and it's very accessible in that sense, but also you can go as complex as you want. And I'm going to show you why that is, right? Okay, here I'm Reason. This is a completely new project. You have your rack empty. One of the things that I like about Reason is that it's very visual, right? So here you have your instruments, very accessible. Then you have your effects, utilities, and players. I'm not gonna go deep into this is not like a Reason 101 kind of video, but I just wanna show you how simple and easy accessible it is, and how complex it can be if you wanted to. So let's say I got this let's say I added this sampler here, which is one of my favorite samplers in Reason, and NNXT. So right off the bat, you get this module here. Again, it's very visual, and you can go and go to the library of presets that this this sampler has. Look at this. It's crazy. And the cool thing about this is how good sounding they are as well. Like here you have a grand piano, which I use a lot, just so you get a glance. It's very good sounding, and this is without any effects, without anything. Now, let's say you want to add reverb. You don't have to go to a plugin or anything. You can click here and mix, and you already have in your mixer here this very first button here. Hopefully you can see my mouse where I'm pointing at, and you activate that and you have your plate, your reverb. And now you get reverb. Let's crank it up so you can see it, so it's more obvious, right? Oh, so you want a delay, you can just activate it here, number 4, which is delay here, right? Let's crank it up so it's more obvious. So that easy, you get just those two things right away, right? That's how accessible it is if you just want to start making music. Now you can get it complicated by opening the panel and start messing around with all these knobs. And not only that, you can turn around this module, this synth, to cable, to play with the cables as if it's like in real life, right? The other part where I really like Reason is if I ever want to start using Cubase, I can use Reason as a plugin within Cubase. So that's a win-win situation, I think, in my opinion. I put together like a very simple track for this video. And the reason why I wanted to do that just was kind of to show how simple it is to start making music in Reason. And also kind of my main, I want to say the instruments or devices that are the easiest and better sounding for you to start making music right away. You don't have to be a musician, you don't have to be a pro. With these, you can start playing around and start discovering new things. Okay, so here's Reason. And let's get into the instruments first. So you get Substractor. It's my first recommendation here. It's a very simple device that has lots of great presets. And what I recommend, instead of getting overwhelmed with all these buttons and knobs and such, is just start playing around with the presets, pick one that you like, and maybe start moving things a little bit around, and to start getting familiar with what what the changes are in the sound. And the one of the most important things is trust your ear, right? If you like the sound that you're getting, then that's cool. It's fine. If you have a very specific sound in your head because you heard it before in another song, the most likely is it's been used in another song. So I just try to go with my mind in blank and start playing around with knobs and buttons and such, and until I start getting like interesting sounds and start writing. So the first thing that I did was I added this subtractor then for this small track. Again, it's very simple and very basic. And I kind of wrote, not kind of, I wrote this little part here, right? I just write this loop. And this was very simple. This was just I ended up with this loop. Very simple. One thing that you can do is just explore different sounds. So right? And then what you can do is start playing around with. I would suggest to start playing with these oscillators. So you can change the shape of the oscillators, the octaves. Right? And start playing until you get sounds that you like. You want to play with a filter. Right? And like that, I ended up with this sound that I like. And one thing that Subtractor has is it's the sound quality of it. For me, for this video gamey, classical video gamey kind of synthy sounds, it's very good. It's very, very, very good. The second one that I want to recommend is this one, the monotone bass synth synthesizer. That's hard for me to say. But one thing that about this that I've learned throughout the years is that it says bass, but you don't necessarily have to stick to bass. In this case, I do. I'm using it as a bass, but as you can see, it's very simple. And to be honest, it's similar to the Subtractor. So you have two oscillators, and with this knob, you can combine the two oscillators. And then you can play with filters and the amplification, LFO envelope. You're gonna learn all of these terms as you go. I'm not gonna teach right now all of those. I don't want to overwhelm you, but just play with the knobs. Just play with the knobs. You're gonna start discovering what kind of sounds they make, or and you can. What you can do also is you're gonna find a lot of education online of what the LFO is, what an envelope is, what's the filter, blah 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 blah. In this case, for this song, I used the same pattern, but I deleted notes from the pattern to make it a little bit different. But it's the same pattern. And I used a preset and modify a little bit of the original sound of this preset is this is Bara Brabas, but you can end up having making like synthy leads here. So don't limit yourself to what the instrument or device says it is for. Playing around with it, be creative. Everybody's so creative. So, and it's very easy to use. Here you have like different shapes. right? Here you mix the oscillators. I have it right close to the middle. Octaves, right? Then you have your filter. I really like the filter here for this this device. You see, you can start having making lots of weird sounds. You have a delay. So again, you don't necessarily have to start buying new devices and stuff. You can just not new devices, like plugins and stuff. Of course, if you want to get complex or more specific effects that plugins out there have, then yes, of course, you gotta buy them. But that doesn't mean you can't start making music, right? The other instrument that I really like is called Thor. Just a higher synth, and this is just a preset. I didn't even change anything on this one. Maybe I added a little bit of, which I'm gonna show you later on, a little bit of reverb and delay. But that's it. This module here, Thor, I just used a preset. But as you can see, you can get as complex as possible, as you want, basically. This is one of the most complex synths or devices that Reason has. The only reason why the only motive, this is complicated. The only reason why I recommend Thor is because of the library of sounds that it has. It's very, very, very good. So if you're okay with using presets, Thor, it's a good one. And which you should be fine using presets. Presets are your friends. That's the reason why they're there. But if you really want to get complex, well, you can open the programmer for Thor here, and you can go crazy. You even have a sequencer here that you can run. Another one that I truly recommend is the Kong, which is this drum machine here. It's a drum machine. You have all these triggers, right? I have an 808 preset loaded in. But what I usually do is I reset the device and start assigning my own sounds, or I start from the library of samples that Reason has. Only within Kong, I start looking for sounds that I like. So, right? And let's say you want this sound, and you can apply it to this. And especially when you have, like in my case, that I have my keyboard here, it has the pads, so I can actually use them directly in my keyboard. I usually set up a custom Kong layout, if you will. In this case, I loaded in a preset, which you have tons of presets here that you can play with also. Again, start with presets and then start modifying them. That's my recommendation, right? I have that. So you can play around with the pitch and how you want that sound to be, right? So, right? That's playing with the pitch, the volume of it, the pan. And these are kind of the simpler controllers. You can open up here and you can play even more. So here's playing with the sample in this section here, and then you can add effects specifically to this or to the buzz, which is to the entire device, if you will. How does my song sound? Again, I only have one pattern, which is this. This is where I started. And then repeating that same pattern throughout different instruments. This is what I got so far in the intro. Right? Very simple. Starts building up, start moving forward. And that's how you start making music. As simple as that. Now, other instruments that I want to recommend, I have two more. And it's one here, it's for textures, and it's called the Grain Sampler Manipulator. Again, here what I have is a preset. But basically, what you can do is you can reset your device and you can import whatever sound you want here, and then just play around with all of these controllers to make what I would say it's a kind of a texture. In this case, this is what I have in the song. Okay, so very texture, very ambient, if you will. But again, this is just one sound being loaded here and then sampled or looped. And this indicates where it starts and where it ends, the kind of the loop. This is how the speed, you can play with the speed, the jitter of how that is reproduced. And then you have a bunch of controls here that you can adjust the sound. So let's just play around a little bit to show you how things change. You see how it's moving fast now, but the sound is kind of the same, even when changing that speed. But here, you get, you can play with a pitch, semitones. You can add an oscillator. Here, what you see here is me. I automated the sound of it, just so you get. Without that automation, this is the sound. With the automation, is this. So I like that, and you can start. I could do that, right? So you start playing around with the knobs and you start getting sounds that you like. So that's that's another instrument or device that I recommend. It's Grain, to kind of add texture and ambience and make. I find it to be a device that adds a lot of mood and a lot of atmospheric sound. It's really good. And another one, the last one that I want to recommend is the drums. So it's very basic. It's drums. Yeah, that's it. It's drums. But I think that right off the box, you get good sounding drums. Now, when you want real sounding instruments, the drums is, for me at least, is one of the most. I don't know. It's one of the trickiest ones. It's very easy to sound very fake and very cheap. And I think the recent drum kit here that this instrument, this device, it's fairly decent. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's fairly decent, and it gives a lot of flexibility. This is the drum. Wait, here it is. Very simple. the flexibility that you get, right? So you can go ahead. First, again, what I recommend is start with a kit that it's a preset. In this case, I started with one that's tight and clicky. But then you can go ahead and get into each of the parts of the drum, like the kick, right? You can play around with parts of the kit. You can add reverb to each one of them. I took it out because I am adding reverb on the mixer directly, not using this. But you can play around with the reverb of each of the parts of the drum, right? And the overhead and the room here with the reverb, right? Then you can go even further and start tweaking each of the parts, like the kick, for example. Right? You can change the pitch, the decay, the volume, right? The pan, then the kind of the reverb kind of stuff, like overhead, how roomy, and how it reverberates with the snare. And one thing also, you can select the type of kick that you want. So let's say you want an open. You see how it changes? Right? So, and you can do that with each one of the parts. Like here, the snare. I can change the snare. Right? And you can play around with everything. The crash, two crashes you have the tambourine, you have claps, you have the ride, the hi-hat, everything, right? I really recommend the drums, especially if you're doing something that's, that's not as electronic, even if it's pop, if you're doing something with that you want to emulate, if you will, real drums, that this is a very decent device that you can use. Oh, I'm missing one, which is the NNXT. Is the first one that we use. And this one is not a synth. This is a sampler. And again, you can have the sampler like this, or you can open it and start playing around with all these controllers. The reason why, again, so every time I say the reason why, I get called out. My own brain calls me out. But the reason why I recommend this is it's because the library of sounds, if you want to go again with real sounding instruments, this is a great, great, great sampler full of instruments that you can use, all types. You have here a different tags for each instrument. Let's say acoustic, and you have un cajon, you have banjos, you have lots of instruments sampled. Again, not all of them are perfect, not all of them are great, but it's a very, 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 I mean, right off the bat, right in the software, without having to go anywhere else to buy like plugins or libraries. This is a really, really, really good starting point. I mean, and in this case, I used the piano and listen to it. It's a very decent piano, I would say. I think it's a very decent piano. So just using those simple instruments that I just showed you, this is the very simple track that I put together. Again, it's not complete, it's not finished, it doesn't have any production to it. It's the transitions, risers, all the stuff, sound design, it doesn't have anything, right? So it's very bare bone. But just using those, how many instruments did I taught you today? Like I recommended today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instruments. And this is what I got. With a very simple loop or phrase, if you will. It's crazy how simple it is. Very simple. I think that's a beginning of an idea that in my opinion it's starting to get shape in a very nice way. Hopefully this helps you get on stock and then and this is enough guidance for you to feel like you can start making music for your projects, whether it's, personal projects, a video game that you're making, you're doing a short film, or just as a hobby. I think, in my opinion, a software like Reason and these 7 instruments that I just recommended for you to start with are enough for you to start putting together your tracks and your music. I think it's very, very, very achievable. So hopefully this helps. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button, and of course subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get updates whenever I post a new video. And of course, leave me in the comments below. Are you interested in learning more? Do you like this kind of introduction? Did you like this kind of introduction to Reason? Or introduction of how you can start making your own music for your own projects, your own video games? Leave me some comments below, suggestions. If you want more about this, if you want to, let's say, like Reason 101 or tutorials of how to use Reason, or more in-depth use of everything here in Reason, just go ahead and leave it in the comments below, and I'll do my best to kind of walk you through how you can make music in Reason. So anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I see you in the next one. Peace.